Brad, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we're ready to hear your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. But the reason I am here before you is to present the case that the 275 Lark Street, a restaurant known as Cafe Hollywood, is operating as a nuisance property. I'm hoping that based upon the evidence presented tonight and in the record, the board will reach the same conclusion on that matter. This is having a significant and unduly negative impact on the surrounding neighborhoods, and certainly no city neighborhood, should have to deal with this sort of continuous issue. It's been an unbroken pattern of incidents that have escalated over time. We're talking about 120 service calls to the Albany Police Department over the past year and a half, 45 of those in the past 6 months. I'm just going to go through some of those incidents because I think to a large degree, the incidents and the pattern and the number of incidents really speak for themselves. November 30th, 2019, reports of a fight and a stabbing with multiple wounds. January 4th, 2020, report of a fight. January 28th, 2020, report of a fight. February 9th, 2020, person with a weapon. January 11th, 2021, traumatic injury. February 26th, 2021, fight. April 2nd, 2021, emotionally disturbed individual. April 25th, 2021, 3 fights, 3 calls on the same evening for fights at the establishment. May 14th, 2021, a fight and traffic or other hazard at the location. June 5th, 2021, assault involving a machete. Early in the morning, Saturday, June 5th, 2021, a 36-year-old male was taken to Albany Medical Center with a laceration to his lower leg after he was assaulted with a machete on Lark Street outside of 275 Lark Street, Cafe Hollywood, after he and the assailant had been patronizing the establishment. The machete attack on June 5th, 2021 began as a confrontation inside of Cafe Hollywood between the 36-year-old victim and 2 other individuals that escalated and continued into Lark Street after Cafe Hollywood failed to properly de-escalate the altercation or contact the appropriate authorities. Again, this is a pattern of events that originate in or around Cafe Hollywood that propel out into the surrounding areas and neighborhoods, impacting adjacent residential properties and businesses. June 20th, 2021, another report of a fight. July 4th, 2021, person with a weapon, fireworks, vehicle in violation at the location. July 23rd, 2021, reports of a person with a weapon, property check and detail. Further, later that evening, Friday, July 23rd, 2021, about 1 in the morning, 34-year-old male sustained a gunshot wound to the head and later died in the area of Willett and Hudson Avenue. Ongoing investigation, the shooting undertaken by the state and the city authorities, local law enforcement, at the time of this filing, believes that an argument stemmed from inside Cafe Hollywood at 275 Lark Street resulted in subsequent shooting of the 34-year-old victim that occurred in the nearby area of Willett and Hudson Avenue. Altercation started inside of Cafe Hollywood, in turn was allowed to continue into the street and the surrounding neighborhood, and ultimately resulted in the shooting death of the 34-year-old victim. Pronounced deceased Saturday, July 24th, 2021. Just brief moment of silence for that victim. Thank you. The reality here is that Cafe Hollywood has become a hub of intractable violence It's only a matter of time before an unacceptable trend results in further injury, crime, fear, and death. I think we've seen this pattern play out over a period of time, as evidenced in the record. And if we don't do something, it's only going to continue. So it's critical. This is addressed to prevent further violence, bloodshed in the area. And frankly, I think any establishment with this sort of a record would be taken as a case to the zoning board as a nuisance case. Frankly, I don't have that information in front of me, but I'm pretty confident that most establishments in this neighborhood and others do not operate like this. So we're asking for BZA to further consider this case, to declare that Cafe Hollywood, 275 Lark Street, is in fact a nuisance, and that the use of a restaurant at the location should be terminated for a period of a minimum of 2 years, as called for by the USDO. All that said, this was filed jointly with the Common Council representative for the area, Richard Conti, and I'm going to let Richard speak to some of his experiences and concerns with the filing. Thank you.
That a nuisance exists which threatens the public health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood and surrounding businesses. We did not come before the board lightly, but as documented in the complaint submitted by myself and Mr. Glass, the record of incidents, and in particular, 2 of the most recent incidents, which included a fight involving a machete and an incident which resulted in gunshots and subsequent death, compels us to take this action and ask the board to make a nuisance finding. Mr. Glass has already outlined the complaint, but I want to call the board's attention to a letter submitted jointly by the 4 neighborhood associations surrounding the subject property, which I believe you received. That would be the Hudson Park, Center Square, Washington Park, and Park South neighborhood associations. And specifically, based on the concerns raised by residents within a 200 feet radius of 275 Lark Street, the letter contains observations which include an escalating rise in incidents resulting in APD calls for calls to the property, altercations between various groups that emanate at this location and then disperse into the surrounding neighborhood, fights that spill out onto the sidewalk and into the street, blocking pedestrians and vehicles, and concerns with the management of the property itself. I will also note that separate from this proceeding, Albany Police Chief Eric Hawkins has already made a finding that a nuisance exists at 275 Lark Street, in accordance with the public nuisance abatement provisions of Article 8 of Chapter 255 of the Albany City Code. Through this proceeding, we're asking that the BZA make the additional finding so that we can proceed to nuisance abatement actions. It's not our desire to see a vacant or shuttered property, but to put in place common sense mitigation mechanisms that will address a very real and serious problem. And so I want to thank you for your consideration of this complaint, and hopefully we'll have a resolution that deals with the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Conti. Normally, we would continue to receive the case from Mr. Ross or his attorney. Is Mr. Ross or his attorney here?
I believe the applicant is in the attendees list. The applicant?
The respondent.
Oh, the respondent, rather. I apologize.
I'm here.
You can go ahead.
Yes, Colin on
Colin, we can't hear you.
All right. I can hear you guys fine. I know what I can do.
You should be good to go.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. My name's Colin Ross. I'm the owner of Cafe Hollywood. I appreciate some time to speak.
Go ahead.
Will that be allowed? I can't hear you guys.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Once again, I've been the owner of Cafe Hollywood for 20 years, and I've worked there for 28 years. And the business has survived without one of these hearings for the entire time. I can only speak for the sheer fact that I have extremely professional staff that have always gone above and beyond to mitigate the unfortunate circumstances that have been accused of me around the violence in Albany. But I have to tell you, gentlemen and ladies, that we're not the perpetrators of that. We are not instigating it. We go well above and beyond. We actually have a professional security company working for us to mitigate a lot of the violence that goes on around us. I'm very saddened by the sheer fact that somebody, had a death around the corner from me. It was not instigated by us. It was not even portrayed as a altercation. You guys have it a little bit wrong. We don't have those kind of altercations. We have really amazing staff that prevents this kind of stuff. So I'm offended that you guys went above and beyond to accuse me of some of the things that are just not true. I'm also here to defend my staff who have done an amazing job to make Cafe Hollywood an amazing place on Lark Street. I've been there as a veteran-owned business for 20 years, like I said, and it's just unfortunate that there are many, crimes going on around us. But I don't think you can put it on Cafe Hollywood. I don't think you can put it on any business. I think it's unfair. The mayor and the chief of police decided to put a cease and desist order on me for something that we did not actually portray. She went out of her way to say a statement that was untrue. She alleged that we actually we allow people to come into my business with guns. That was terrible. I am emphatically against that statement. I just want to say, going forward, I would just like to open up again and just be the amazing business I've been for 28 years. I've been there for a long time, and my goal is to continue to do exactly that going forward. I appreciate your time, and I do have my manager. She just stepped in. If you guys could give her a couple of minutes.
I would like to be heard as well.
Good evening.
1 second.
1 second, please.
For the record, the attorney for Colin Ross, Trevor Hannigan, is present as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner, you want to-
Mr. Hannigan, are you here to present Mr. Ross' case?
I am.
Okay, then go ahead, Mr. Hannigan.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Board. Good evening, members in attendance. I would just like to raise a few objections before I begin with speaking about 275 Lark Street. First, I'd like to object to the virtual ZBA meeting. I respectfully submit that Governor Cuomo has lifted the New York State emergency and has authorized zoning boards of appeal to meet in person. I respectfully request that this meeting be held in person, particularly when it relates to such an important designation, because should this respectable board find a nuisance, it is empowered with essentially taking back my client's special use permit and shutting down his business. I'd also respectfully submit that the complaint.
The board is meeting in person.
Yes, however, there are no other persons in attendance. We were directed to appear virtually.
There are 12 people in the audience.
We were invited by the corporation counsel's office pursuant to the notice of hearing that said join this link that we're joining right now. If we were aware that we could have been there in person, we most certainly would have been.
Hi, Mr. Hannigan. This is Martha Mahoney from Corporation Counsel's office. And yes, I sent you the notice on August 1st regarding this August 11th hearing. And I'm looking at the notice right now, and it says meeting date and location, Wednesday, August 11th, 2021, 200 Henry Johnson Boulevard, 6 p.m. And so we are offering this hybrid hearing format, and that it's in person or virtual via Zoom. But the notice does clearly state the time and location. It is noted, though, that you would like to be in person, so perhaps I'll let you finish your response, though. Thank you.
Thank you. We would prefer to be in person, certainly, to address these issues. And certainly, we would like to have a fair opportunity to defend 275 Lark Street. I have respectfully requested through Corporations Counsel's office that the Zoning Board of Appeals execute certain subpoenas to the Albany Police Department. So apples and apples can be compared without necessarily conclusions that are being drawn without any basis in the record for these conclusions. Mr. Glass and Mr. Conti, who authored the complaint, I respectfully submit, they just submit conclusions. They don't tell us how the Albany Police Department believes, quote unquote, 275 Lark Street had anything to do with these particular incidences that are alleged in the complaint. More specifically, there are several other bars, restaurants, small stores, corner stores, liquor stores that are all a part of this Center Square, Washington Park Street neighborhood who have calls for service, and I respectfully submit do not address them as well as 275 Lark Street does. And in any event, upon a further review by this board of these alleged instances, you'll see that these instances that are alleged don't happen from within the bar. At what point does the ownership extend their responsibility into the street on behalf of the patrons? As Mr. Rosa stated, he has a security system that's in place that monitors each of his patrons, their professional security. They escort people in and out. If there's a problem with anybody, it is respectfully the job of the Albany Police Department to police the city streets and not 275 Lark Street. A homicide that happens around the corner a block and a half away, I respectfully submit, is not a nuisance from this bar. This could have happened in any neighborhood, and unfortunately, we all know too very well that it happens in many neighborhoods here in the city of Albany, almost 12 or 15 times this year alone. We further object to the chief's unilateral order closing this establishment. We respectfully submit we were not given due process. There was no notice, no opportunity to be heard before the chief suspended all operations on July 23rd. We respectfully object to the city issuing a declaration of a local state of emergency, that it wasn't followed the particular protocol under the executive law, following it in triplicate, extending it every 5 days has not been necessarily complied with either. And we respectfully submit that the board execute the subpoenas, that the board conduct an investigation and compare apples to apples of all the different establishments in this neighborhood. I proposed at least 20 different locations that the Albany Police Department can obtain from their records. I submit fairly easily. I also foiled this information. It has not been delivered to me, and I cannot present it to the board at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hannigan.
Thank you.
So normally at this point, in a hearing of this nature, what the board would do would be to allow both the complainant and the respondent to take a brief rebuttal against each other, and then subsequent to that, we would allow public opinion. Due to the fact that we're holding this hybrid hearing tonight, since Mr. Glass is ill, and we didn't want to expose anyone else to any kind of a disease in year 2 of the COVID pandemic. We're going to give the city and you, Mr. Ross, and your attorney a chance to do rebuttals at a subsequent hearing in 2 weeks. So we're going to grant, in essence, a partial adjournment of this case until that time to allow you to finish that. And let me ask the members of the board if you would approve a partial adjournment to allow Mr. Glass to come in person. Hopefully it'll be healthy then, and to allow Mr. Ross and his counsel to also come in person in 2 weeks.
I think
Thank you.
I think that would be advisable. Also, would it not be an opportunity to ask some questions for the city to supplement the record for the owner of the establishment as well? So not only to adjourn for 2 weeks, but also to, when we meet again in 2 weeks, to have more as part of the record that the applicant city can present.
Yes, thank you. We'll keep the record open.
I would respectfully request that the board consider executing the subpoenas to raise the rate.
Mr. Hannigan, we'll keep the record open for 2 weeks. And because the Albany Police Department has turned out tonight, we'll allow them to give us some public opinion into the record, or if they want to read from any documents from the APD, then we'll take that with some evidentiary weight. In addition, we'll allow Mr. Ross' manager, who I believe is signed up to speak tonight.
Yes.
We'll also be able to speak, but we'll confine the most of our taking of public opinion to the next meeting. Just a question before we allow the members of the APD to speak. You stated that you have requested the board to serve subpoenas upon the Albany Police Department. Can you provide any legal precedent or support for the board being able to do such a thing?
Yes, the Supreme Court has permitted zoning board of appeals to execute subpoenas for review at their meeting at the request of the respondent. Certainly.
Sorry to cut you off. Mr. Hannigan, from my understanding, what we received was a document that was not signed by a judge, so it's not considered a subpoena. I saw that you signed the document. Have you since had a judge sign that?
I left it for the zoning board of appeals to sign it. If they'd like to sign it, I respectfully submit that they can.
Okay, Mr. Hannigan, I think we'll consult with Corporation Counsel, since they're our counsel too in matters such as this, and we've never at least in the last 7 or 8 years, executed a subpoena. So I'd like to see the law that provides that we're able to do that. If you could send that case to Council Mahoney, that would be very helpful.
I certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything else, Martha?
Thank you. And also, I believe Mr. Hannigan, I don't know if you've submitted a FOIL request in conjunction with this, but I believe someone else from Corporation Counsel's office has sent you the information for how to file a FOIL request. I have FOIL. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Would the members of the APD like to speak at this point?
Good evening. My name is Sergeant Jim Lewis. I am assigned to Center Station, and I work primarily the midnight shift, which covers midnight to 8 a.m. 275 Lark Street, Cafe Hollywood is one of the businesses that are located within the geographical areas of Center Station, in which we cover. Just to briefly talk on a few of the incidents that I was personally involved in and responded to. One in question was November 30th, 2019, in which there was a fight that occurred inside the bar that ultimately led to one of their bouncers being stabbed. Also, in February of 2020, I also responded to a fight that occurred at Cafe Hollywood in the inside foyer, in which several individuals did display handguns and menaced one of the bouncers with a handgun. Shortly thereafter, I did locate 2 vehicles, and we were able to take several people into custody and recover 3 loaded handguns from that incident alone. One of the most recent ones that I responded to was the fight that occurred in which an individual was struck numerous times with a large machete that was retrieved from the vehicle out front of Cafe Hollywood. The fight actually initiated in the inside bar and was pushed outside, at which time one of the individuals retrieved the machete from the car, chased the individual into the roadway, and struck him several times, nearly amputating his left leg. Over the last several months, we have responded to the area Cafe Hollywood for numerous complaints, numerous fight calls. We have responded to loud music, both coming from the bar itself and from vehicles out front. We have also responded to traffic complaints in which several vehicles are double parked on Lark Street, making it difficult for vehicles to travel, including emergency vehicles. And lastly, recently, prior to the shutdown in Cafe Hollywood, they did have a large fence that was put up on the sidewalk, which encompassed the entire sidewalk, that prevented the patrons from standing out front of their residence, or out front of their business, rather. What that did do is it pushed large groups adjacent to the business and across the street from the business onto the stoops of residential townhomes. This is also a quality of life issue for the people that actually live there. And lastly, I was also one of the responding officers in which an individual lost his life around the corner. I know the lieutenant is going to speak on that, but I was also involved in that call in which I responded minutes previous to for a person with a weapon. However, there was not enough description to stop and engage anybody for that. And within a minute or so afterwards is when the shooting occurred, and a minute of me potentially being involved in that as well. So that is a little insight from me in my experience in responding to the calls located at 275 Lark Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Lewis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clifford Young. I'm a lieutenant in the Criminal Investigation Unit. Mr. Glass did a good job summarizing the main two events that we were here to talk about tonight. Sergeant Lewis also did a good job summarizing the first event on June 5th, which is the machete incident. I'm just here real quick to talk about the July 3rd homicide investigation. Now that's currently an ongoing investigation, but what I can say in reference to that investigation is that we can actively place participants that were involved in this directly in the bar prior to in the area and out front involved in tumultuous activities in the area. And that is a direct, we believe it's a direct result leading to the chain of events that caused the homicide of the individual, the 23rd. That's the main gist of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Detective. Are there any other members of the APD that wish to speak? Thank you. In that case, Mr. Ross, would you like your manager to speak? And again, we'll have an additional opportunity in 2 weeks to hear public opinion, and our record will stay open on this case between now and then.
Thank you. And if it's okay, I'll just chime in. Mr. Hannigan, we've put up the notice that we provided you both via email and USPS mail, where it says the meeting date and location. So for the subsequent hearing on the 25th, it will look like this again with both the link and the physical location of where we are in person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Roast, your manager?
Her name is Erin.
Mr. Roast is present, but it looks like he's not unmuting.
Is there someone named Erin in the participants?
If we have another person who wishes to speak, you'll need to unmute yourself, and then you should be able to speak.
Sorry. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
My name is Erica Gardner. And I'm the gentleman. I've been with Colin for 2.5 years, and I've been aware of a lot of the changes going on in the city. As far as violence is concerned with Cafe Hollywood, in my time with Colin, we have had a complete change in our security. We have brought on a security company where we staff between 10 and 15 security guards in our most busiest nights. That means we have, with a capacity of 126 people, almost one security guard to every 8 to 10 patrons we have in there. We have closed our back parking lot to not allow anybody back there to allow any mischief or any things that could occur in our back parking lot. We have, against the better judgment of the Lark Street bid, we have enacted wanding, frisking. We did, because we had no other option, put up barriers that we also purchased on our own because we did not know how to secure the areas that we needed help with. Our request that went out to the city of Albany for help for a detail, which we were willing to pay for, because as it was described to us, the city of Albany could not help us because you're 6 years behind in hiring due to a debate or some kind of something with your retirement, which is what the detectives told us is why we were denied our special detail, because the staff isn't there. At what point does our responsibility end? Because the machete attack that continues to be put on top of us occurred 56 minutes after our security intervened. There was a square off of 2 gentlemen in our bar. The security held 1 gentleman back and escorted 1 gentleman out. 56 minutes after that occurred with no event in our bar. Oh, by the way, which we also cooperate with the police at every time. They have every footage of anything they've ever requested from us. There was never an incident that occurred within our bar. 56 minutes later, when the second patron left, there was an attack that occurred in the street. We have 18 security cameras. There's not an inch of our property that cannot be seen from those cameras. 56 minutes later, somebody was attacked, and it's unfortunate, and we don't want that for anyone. But what's unfair is for every violent act that occurs in the Center Square area to be attached to Cafe Hollywood is unfair. We all work hard. We all have asked for help. We all do what's necessary. We go above and beyond. There is not one establishment that you will find who is purchased wands, 15 security guards, closing off. Oh, by the way, we're a bar that's able to be closed at 4 a.m. And on our own policing and our own choices, we've chose to close as early as 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Coming out of a pandemic that we limped through, we make money in the night hours. And because to not have issue, we've closed our bar early without request of anybody else by our own doing, up to 3 hours early, if not more, each night. At what point does the responsibility leave our hands? People continue to make comments to me about the clientele that we attract. And I ask everybody to ask themselves, what exactly does the clientele that we bring on mean? What does that mean? Who does that mean? Because if you ask me, a bar that is using metal detectors at the door, a bar that is charging people to get into, that's a deterrent for some people, a bar that is has up to 15 security guards in their establishment during a busy night, a bar that does not allow you to park near our or in our back private parking lot. To me, the violent people, that's a deterrent. So I'm not sure that we are the nuisance, considering we've gone above and beyond to actually secure things for not only our patrons, but our staff as well. Our neighbor, we actually go above and beyond to make sure that anything that is left behind, whether they be cigarette butts, cups, anything, our cleaning staff goes through and they clean up for our neighborhood. I understand that violence is an issue not only in the city of Albany, but as we all can see, it's definitely an issue in Saratoga, Troy. I mean, Stewart's just got shut up in Troy, and they're not shutting down the Stewarts. This is a livelihood. We're all vested also. So not only
If you could finish up within 30 seconds, please. You've exceeded your 5 minutes.
Oh, I exceeded my 5 minutes. Thank you. I was ready to go. Oh. Oops.
Get them back.
No, I can't talk anymore. I've exceeded my 5 minutes.
Good job. Awesome.
Don't tell me we're doing the fucking wrong thing.
So as announced earlier, we will adjourn for 2 weeks. We'll give, hopefully Mr. Glass will be recovered by that point in time. And we'll be able to allow both the city and Mr. Roston's attorney an opportunity to rebut each other's case, and we'll be able to hear more public opinion. We'll also leave the record open for this 2 weeks, and we will consult with Corporation Counsel in the hope that Mr. Hannigan has sent the case law that he suggests allows the board to serve subpoenas upon a city agency. Thank you all, and we'll move on to the next case.
Just a moment while I pull it up. The next case is 23 Packet Boulevard. The applicant is Ryan M. Smith, and the representing agent is Daniel R. Hirschberg.
Luis, is Mr. Hirschberg coming here tonight or sending someone from his offices?
I'm looking into, I see Daniel Hirschberg on the invitation or the panel attendees list, and I Willingham. Mr. Hirschberg, you should be able to speak now. Mr. Hirschberg, if you're ready, you can go ahead.
Louise, let's move on to the next case. We'll give Mr. Hirschberg a chance when we're done with that.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Good timing.
I guess I'm unmuted now.
Go ahead, Mr. Hirschberg.
I'm here tonight talking about 23 Packet Boulevard, which is the church property next door to the Albany Leadership Charter School for Girls, Charter High School for Girls. The applicant wants to install a temporary portable classroom at the rear of the church, the rear of the church looking from Samaritan Avenue, or the side yard of the church looking in from Packet Boulevard. And this will be temporary. We're asking for a one-year permit to put it there, and some of the issues are raised had to do with setbacks from either the street. The maximum front setback is 10 feet, but there's some conflict in the USDO code because it says trailers are not allowed in the front yard. So since these are considered trailers, because they're not on any permanent foundation, we're complying with the one that says no trailers in the front yard. So by doing that, we violate the front restriction. We're 182 feet back from Packet Boulevard rather than the prior 10 feet. And I would hold out that the nature of this installation is temporary. It's to provide for some new middle school students that will be brought into the school. And I think that the setback restrictions should not apply to this project.
Thank you, Mr. Hirschberg.
I have some more slides there. I don't know if they're available. Yeah, that's a view of what the portable facility will look like. It comes in on trucks, and it's set up. There's a skirt around it, but it remains on its wheels, so therefore it's a trailer. And it can accommodate 2 classrooms that will have up to 64 students in them, and 2 teachers. Having trouble reading it. Uh-oh.
Is there a specific slide that you'd like me to go to, Mr. Hirschberg? Mr. Hirschberg, you're muted.
Mr. Hirschberg, did you wish to continue?
Hello?
We can hear you now.
Okay. The three issues had to do with the front setback, a side yard, a location for the trailers, and for an impact on the parking at the church. And like I said, the USDO talks about permanently reducing the parking. And because this is a temporary classroom, which will be moved after a year, we do not think that the reduction in parking should apply.
Thank you. Are you ready for questions, Mr. Hirschberg?
Mr. Hirschberg, are you ready for questions?
I can't hear you.
Are you ready for questions, Mr. Hirschberg?
Still can't hear you.
Are you ready for questions, Mr. Hirschberg?
I can accept any.
Okay. Are there any questions of the board?
Dan, hopefully you can hear me. I have a question as to whether these accommodations are being made in accordance with or to accommodate students in light of classroom or social distancing restrictions brought on by the COVID epidemic?
No, they're not. This is a planned expansion.
What's the plan for after the period expires? The trailers will be removed and the students will be brought into the school where there will be space for them?
Well, the school had hoped to take this on sooner, but because of the COVID, they couldn't get started on an expansion plan at the school, which they intend to apply for shortly, to accommodate the students that are proposed to be housed in these trailers.
Are there any further questions from the board?
Have one. So to clarify, are you saying that the parties have not already applied for the expansion plan? And if they haven't applied, when do you think they plan to apply?
No, we're trying to finalize plans with an architect and a construction manager and the staff of the school to finalize the plans, but we anticipate shortly, probably within a month or 6 weeks, we'll make an application for an addition to the school.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the board?
Is there any screening being planned for the Packet Boulevard or the western elevation of the structure?
Well,
any things or anything?
we don't think it's very visible from either Hackett Boulevard or obviously not from Samaritan Road. It's quite a ways back, and there are some trees at the front of the school. They're at front of the church. As a matter of fact, there are a number of mature trees. They're primarily in front of the church. But if you take a look at the contours coming up from Packet Boulevard, there's quite a hill in there, and you really have to look to see these trailers at all from Packet Boulevard.
Dan, how long do you anticipate construction to take on the expansion, including time for approval for the expansion?
Yeah, we think the construction period is 7 to 8 months. So it'll be tight for us to get it done with our approval process. But we're working now with construction manager to see how much we can take out of it so we can open in time for the next school year.
Anything further?
Has staff calculated any impervious lot coverage change for this project? I'm assuming since it was built on ground currently occupied by the parking lot, there's no change. But has that been considered in the application?
That has, the lot coverage will remain unchanged.
Thanks.
And if that's the last question from the board, are there any members of the public who would like to speak for or against this project? I'm waiting online, Louise.
If there is any member of the public who wishes to provide comments, please raise your hand. I see no hands.
Thank you. Are there any wishes of the board?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the requested variances for the duration of the school year.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of granting this motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hirschberg.
Thank you very much.
All right, and the next case, please. The next case is 65 Crank Street. The applicant is Azo Ridge Design and Consulting LLC. The representing agent is Bridget Shoemaker, who is present. Whenever you're ready, Bridget.
It's green.
Here you go.
We're good? All right. Good evening, members of the board. This is a very lengthy PowerPoint presentation, and I know that it's already been a long night. So what I'll do is I'll just start very concise, and then as you have questions, I can go into much further detail. The long and short on both 65 Crank and then the next application, or the next project that we're going to look at, these both apply to the KIPP Albany Community Public Charter Schools and their rebranding program. So all of the signage that we are requesting variances for, that signage currently exists today. We did FOIL those permits. However, there wasn't a lot of information, so I do apologize that they weren't very detailed. But what we're looking to do is to rebrand both sites to meet the current branding. So Louise, if you don't mind pulling up the PowerPoint, are you able to do that? Okay, yes, so let's go. As you can see, the project location, the Common Council rezoned 65 Crank Street to the R1M district since the original permits were actually pulled. Therefore, we have to come for variance for all of the signage that is on the building. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So there are 6 total variances in request, but there's only 3 signs on the property. So as you can see here, the view on the left is looking from, I believe it's First Avenue. So as you can see, you can only see one end of the building from that perspective, and that's actually the parking lot end of the building. The top right is the current freestanding sign, which is tucked in those beautiful mature trees. And it is not visible from any other angle than this one. Then the bottom right is the current wall sign that faces Crank Street. So we can go ahead. If you go to this site plan document outlines to you the 6 different variances. So on the front of the building, variance requests 1 and 2 apply to that sign that is parallel to Crank Street. And I'm actually gonna have you skip ahead to the drawing where it says area variance request 1. Go back up. Yep, just go to the drawing. Let me make it simple. So you can see the before. There we go. Okay, so what exists today, what is proposed. And then the drawing down on the bottom, so we do have a permit. We do have a permit to do this, the logo icon on the front of the building, which is centered on the building aesthetically. It balances everything. It's clean and it's very visible. The reason why we're asking for a second sign variance on this particular wall is so that we can update the name of the school. So the school name has changed. So it is KIPP Albany Community Charter School. And the second variance request for this particular sign is because of square footage. Louise, I can tell you what page. We can look at page 21.
I think it's slide 21.
I think it's gonna be different for me than you.
Okay, third down on the far right. There we go. So the lettering itself is within code. It's 20.5 square feet. It's the same square footage that exists today or very close to it. The challenge that we're running into and the reason why we've requested a size variance for this particular sign is we need to introduce this background panel. As when we did a test removal of the current letters and they've ghosted on the building. So the building has faded around the letters. There's a clear indication when you take the letters off, you can see the old lettering. And this is going to be the same reason why we have the third variance, which is the sign facing the parking lot. All of the lettering is within code allowance of 24 square feet. However, the backer panels have been introduced to hide that ghosting. Now, KIPP did reach out to a vendor about painting the entire building to avoid the variances. The estimate is about $24,000. So that is not in the current.
If I can just stop, why the whole building and not just the area behind the letters?
Because the siding has faded. So this siding is.
Building was built.
Oh, I see. If you painted over a part that was faded, it wouldn't match the rest.
Right, it would match the rest of the building. Yes, there we go. Yeah, and the building was built right around 2008, so it hasn't. And this is actually a hardy board. It's not a plastic siding, so it really sucks in paint good. So that's kind of the long and short on this one. And I can tell you, Louise, if you don't mind going back to that. Yep, that one. As you can see, the before, the existing, the proposed, the calculations, if we were to calculate just the letters as the previous sign was, we're within the code allowance. However, the backer panel forces the variance request. Do you have any questions on those building signs?
No, if you'd like to continue, we'll ask questions at the end.
Okay, sounds good. All right. And what we're going to do, if you could go back to that full screen again for me. So actually page 46, if you don't mind. Oh yeah, you are different than mine. Okay. The bottom left. I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. Here's some photographic images of those letters pulled off the building where you can see the ghosting. All right, and then should be the next page should be the first one. There we go, awesome. Okay, so here is the existing monument sign as it exists today and the rendering of the proposed sign. So we have 3 variance requests on this particular sign. The first one that I'm going to address is the height, which is the first variance request on this one. So what you're looking at too is also that we're moving the sign forward. Now it will continue to meet the required setbacks as allowed by the city. However, we're pulling it out of those trees to avoid any damage to those trees. They're beautiful, healthy, mature trees. So we want to leave those alone. In order to do so and make the sign visible, we need to pull the sign away from the trees. Also, with pulling it away from the trees, it's becoming closer to the street, again, still meeting setbacks, but now we run into issues with plows and piling snow around the sign. So we propose a taller sign at 7 foot rather than their allowed 5 foot, so that we can make sure that there's a good 2 foot underneath the sign for snow to be plowed off the roads and pile up around that without causing any long-term issues, both to the construction and visibility of the sign. So that is, interesting to that. And then, Louise, if you don't mind going to the next sign, drawing, there you go. You're on top of things, thank you. So here we do have we are requesting a 43 square foot sign versus 20 square foot allowance. Now again, this was recently rezoned by Common Council. Prior to Common Council, we would have had up to 64 square feet for this particular sign. So it is still quite small in relation to an average school sign that we see from the school district. We also want to make sure that motorists can see the sign beyond 2 school buses, which would be about 80 feet. So again, the size of the lettering, the elementary school, the verbiage and everything will be visible beyond the length of 2 school buses. So we found, 80 feet is a good visibility length. You want to give people time to make decisions. And then if you go to the next one, which addresses the digital portion of this particular sign. So the Albany City Code does read no flashing, flashing, intermittent, or rotating lights. The wonderful thing about digital, modern day digital, is that we can pre-program the sign to avoid those particular issues. Therefore, digital done right does not fall into these categories of flashing, intermittent, or rotating lights. So the particular units that Kip is looking to purchase for this school, they will be self-dimming, they will be pre-programmed. We recommend stationary artwork with hold times of 6 to 10 seconds. An average car moving 35 miles an hour will have a clear visibility of the sign for 8 seconds. So as you drive by, it may change once, depending on, how quickly you move through that space. Again, all the lighting can also be programmed to go dark during peak sleeping hours. So if the neighborhood would like this to be, quote, off, it will be dark from, whatever those hours need to be. In addition to that, there is a page showing some other schools in the city of Albany utilizing the same technology, the same scale, but I think the product choices that Kim has been making, you're not going to have that burn on your eyeballs because these are self-dimming signs. These are not, and they adjust to ambient lighting. They're smart sensor. That covers all of the variance requests for this particular site. Do you have questions?
Are there any questions from the board?
Just a question, is this contained within a school zone that has a lower speed limit than the city's 35 limit?
Okay, so if you are moving slower, and that's why I did like an average 6 to 10. Mm-hmm. So let's say if we did a 10-second hold, they could put up the current, like, if a mask mandate changes the day before, they can have that on the screen, they can have the time and temperature, and they could have another another information piece that's happening in that school, and that may be all that you see at the most of 15 miles per hour. So the data that I have had at my disposal works off of 35 miles an hour. But yeah, obviously in a school zone, they better be moving slower.
Okay. The other question I had, are there certain elements to the site you pointed out in the parking lot that make it particularly difficult for people to see the school or find it when they're making visits?
Yes, I think the positioning of the building in the way that First Ave comes up and then it becomes Frank Street. So when you put it in a GPS And I know people are gonna get used to visiting this property as you come along. You have the view on the left. So that's the main, if you're a visitor to the school, this is the main way you're gonna visit it. If you've never been to this space before. So as you can see, there's only one way that you can see what this building is and confirm that you're in the right place. And again, that particular sign is not visible from any other side of the building than that street, which is First Ave, that is correct.
Yeah. And then one other item to add. In the morning, buses and like most parents coming to drop off their children come down Leonard Street. So the trees where they are right now and the whole other signs like on the building are actually blocking the building. So it's difficult, especially like during like arrival and dismissal, for individuals coming to the school to actually see the clear signage. So
School.
and I'm sorry, yes, I'm Kate
Yeah.
Better. I work with Kim.
Okay.
So, sorry.
Are there any further questions from the board? Okay, I have a couple. First, looking at the picture on the left, and let me back up and give a little context. As you know, the board is constrained to grant the smallest variance possible to grant any variance. So first question is, couldn't the school trim these trees that are blocking, at least in part, the view of the sign, and remove the need to make the sign larger other than just the rebrand?
They're very large.
So to be honest with you, it's, I think the trees are an important asset to the property, particularly where in the south end. It's something that the students and the staff enjoy. So really, I would think that, we want to celebrate the environment that surrounds the school and work with it and make our modifications that we can to preserve the trees.
Thank you, and by no means are we suggesting that they be cut down. But trimming trees obviously can create some more visibility. My second question is about the monument sign, where you want to take the monument sign, which is in the, not that one, okay, where it is standing in front of some trees at this point in time and somewhat shorter. So you do two things, three things. One of which is you move it forward. The second is that you make it taller, and the third is that you make it larger. So first, why wouldn't moving it forward, which wouldn't require any variance at all, be sufficient?
The shape of the new brand is actually different than the existing sign. So it won't actually fit without shrinking the lettering significantly, which then makes it illegible.
Setting aside the change in height for the moment, have you considered any alternatives to making it a 43 square foot sign, which is a substantial increase from the 20 foot that is currently there? In other words, is there any smaller increase that you can propose that would still do what the school needs to do, but allow us to grant a smaller variance?
I can speak from what we've done from a design standpoint. We have tried to shrink different elements of the logo, but we also need to abide by the logo standards, which, brand them, not just here, but beyond, which sets a great precedence for families looking to be a part of a greater entity in this area. And I'm gonna ask, Kate, do you have any thoughts on anything else?
I would just say what's really important with the signage is making sure that we're communicating with our families, our students, and the greater community. So using this as another tool where we can share out things we're having in school. So just really having this as a tool would be beneficial to the entire community. So there's more of an awareness of what's happening in the school. So we're really seeing it as a communication tool, number one, for our families, staff, and the greater community. So I would say that's kind of the biggest priority to make sure that we have a mechanism to share out messaging.
Okay, thank you. Last question. Do you have any measurements or experience with piling up 2 feet of snow in front of the existing sign?
I did
You
not
might as well
measure
be
the
standing
snow.
up, Kate.
Yeah, you have a little more experience.
So, and I would defer, I personally am not involved in the snow process, but I can tell you what I've seen. If you look at, I wish there was better footage of the kind of slope that comes down to the snow. If you see, it's a very like steep parking lot going up. So we have, there's a lot of snow that is pushed up there. The current sign as it is, the current monument sign, this condition of the sign isn't great. It's really, we looked at it and we've said we could move it, but I'm concerned it would actually fall apart. If we would move it, that was the assessment that we got from all the sign vendors. It's essentially, I can let you speak.
Yes, the particular existing sign is completely degraded. We can't, if you try to move it, it's gonna crumble. And we also didn't want to dig out the footings, because if we did that, we would damage the trees. We don't want to cause any harm there.
Thank you. And at any point in the past, has the sign been completely covered by snow from the snowplow?
At that setback, it probably would not. But since we're moving forward for better visibility, I think there's a good chance that it can be.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from the board?
I do have a follow-up question on what Richard just asked about the 2 feet that you added on because of the snow plow issue. Where did the 2 feet come from? Was that based on anything like scientific, or is it just an estimation of what you think might be a good amount of feet?
2 foot, actually 2 to 3 feet is a standard rule of thumb that I've used over the last, I have 18 years experience in doing signage across New York State. So as you move west, obviously when we want to go up to 3 foot, as you move east, we can move it down a little lower. So average snowbanks and experience over the last 18 years, it's not only just that the snow can pile, but when it comes off the plow. So think about your mailbox, the height of your mailbox, and the damage that happens to your mailboxes when that, the snow and the ice come off the plow and the rock comes off the plow. So this gets the pertinent portions of the sign up above that level, so that there's less of a chance for damage, whether it's snow piling or it's the actual salt spray and everything that comes off of the vehicles and the trucks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board?
Does lowering the sign set any risk for the LED components of the sign?
It would.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in this room or online who would like to speak for or against this project?
If there are any members in the Zoom attendees list that are looking to provide comment on this case, if you could just please raise your hand. I see none.
Thank you, Louise. The board will not be coming to a decision on this case tonight. We'll hold it over until our next meeting 2 weeks from now. Thank you. And if you'd like to move on to South Dove Street and present that, please feel free.
Okay. Louise, if you could bring up it's mine page 5, but it has the building views of 3, it's like 3 pictures together. Go back a page. One more, sorry about that. There we go. Okay. So again, my name is Bridget Shoemaker, representing KIPP, Albany Community Public Charter Schools in regards to 42 South Dove Street, which is their middle school. This property is being rebranded as well. And on this property, there are 4 variances being requested. The first one is, as you see, a number 1. So on the front of this building, there are these architectural accents that are quite faded. So one of the ways that we felt that they could refresh the building and also provide some identity to the buildings. And as you see above the main entry point, there is already a logo icon there. So we're looking to do a logo icon. One of them is already permittable, it's approved, and we're able to do that. To do a second one, because these 2 buildings are adjoined, it becomes a second wall sign. So there are 2 architectural elements on the buildings, those circles that you're looking at. 1 sign is permittable, a second one, which would be identical, is the first variance request. Then, so actually, I just want to make sure you can get a full view, and then yes, if you could go to that page. So there are 3 variance requests for the monument sign at this property as well. We have height, square footage, and digital. Actually, you know, I'm gonna back up for a minute. Louise, I'm sorry. We have on the documentation that was submitted to us, I think that actually the second, that 70-foot square wall sign with 24 square foot max allowed, that's actually, that is an error because the second sign is also only 24 square feet. So there's only 3 variances being requested for this location. It would be a duplicate wall sign, so 2 wall signs, 2 variances on the monument. So it's my page 20, if you could look at that, that one, yep. So here's a close-up view. So the sign is 24 square feet when you do the radius of a circle. So you can see it superimposed on the building over the faded architectural element. And the banner that you see on the building, that will be removed. Part of having the utilization of digital signage is that these banners and other types of things that clutter the facades of the buildings and the grounds, those go away in exchange for, you know, that marketing space.
Excuse me, if I can break in for a moment. You have 4 different measurements on this slide. 76, which you said is incorrect.
Correct, yeah, this
24,
actually.
which you said is correct. And then 58, which, since you said that the 24 was the radius, 48 would be the correct diameter if it was a radius of 24.
It's 5-foot radius of a circle. I believe it comes out to 24 square feet. We will double check that. And again, this is a typo because I did copy and paste from the request list that I had from the city. So this should just say a variance request for a second wall sign. So I think there's actually another drawing that looks just like this.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. I apologize. If we could go to the picture of the monument sign with the measurements around it. Yes, thank you. So on the monument sign, there are 2 variance requests. Again, one for digital and then one for the height. For this particular monument sign, it is staying in place. We're renovating the existing signage. So the masonry, steel supports, electrical, all of that is in place. But what we're doing is we're pulling off the faces. We're going to do new fabricated faces so that only the lettering lights up and the logo lights up at, you know, in the evening hours, and the addition of the digital on the sign. Again, the masonry and everything is staying, which is driving the height request, a variance for the height request. And then we spoke earlier about the digital and how we can pre-program that to avoid any flashing, intermittent, rotating, or moving lights.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from the board? Let me ask one first. This 4th variance is to allow an 8-foot tall sign when 5 feet is the maximum height.
It's the peak of the star.
How much is the area of the sign increasing? And does the sign's area need any variance?
It's There is a permit for that sign. The permit does not state the square footage, but we are reutilizing the face. So the logo itself, because it does peak up at the top and peak down at the bottom, that would cause an increase in square footage, yes.
So just, your application says that it's now an 8-foot tall sign?
To the peak of the star, yes, sir.
Okay, so that extends 5 feet above what would be the existing sign? I'm sorry, 3 feet above it?
No, it goes from the base of the ground to the top of the star. So the drawing that you're seeing there does not have the masonry in it. It's just the top portion of the sign that we're actually changing. So the ground where the bottom of the masonry where it touches the soil to the top of the star will be 8 foot.
I think what might be helpful is just seeing
If he added those in.
that superimposed so we can get a sense of what they actually look like on the ground.
Okay.
As opposed, the other one is a completely new location.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one, since the variance is predicated on reconstructing the current sign, I think it would just be helpful to see what that would look like.
Okay.
So we get a sense of what it looks like as
Yes.
opposed to what's currently in place.
Thanks. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a quick clarification question. You said earlier that the logo would be removed from a different part of the building because it looks like in the proposed here, the logo at the top is going to stay. Is that correct? Or?
Yes, that's a replacement of the existing sign and we have a permit for that sign already. Because it meets the allowances from the city.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the board? Hearing none, are there any members of the public in this room or online who would like to speak for or against this project?
If there are any attendees who wish to provide comment, if you could raise your hand, please. Thank you. I see none.
Thanks, Luis. We're going to hold this case over to our next meeting also 2 weeks from now. If in the meantime you could provide the, I don't know what you call it, an overlay or comparison or something.
Yeah. So what you see on the bottom left, you would like how there's an overlay there, but you'd like to see like an actual rendering of the masonry block underneath.
No, just, I see, it's easier for me to, obviously, we see what the new sign looks like, we see what the old sign looks like. I think we're having a hard time articulating the height difference.
Gotcha.
Because it's difficult to see the difference between the new sign and old sign. So maybe they could be shown one on top. The old sign is shown over the new one so we can get a sense of the bulk change. I think it's just an easier thing to get a handle on.
Okay.
Martin, were you saying superimpose? It looks
Like, all right, so, let's say, it's kind of a dumb way to do it. But here's the old sign, and here's the new sign to be able to see the change in the height between them.
Okay, I understand.
Right?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll defer to you on how that might.
How it translates, got it. I think I
This is
got
the
it.
extent of my graphic
Yeah.
design skills. Right here. There we go.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
And then if, in that 2-week window too, if we can have that, there's one too many variances per your data. And we'll get that taken out of our proposal as well.
Perfect, thank
So
you.
we've already got one. Yay.
No, that's always good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay. And then I just have one other question. There's something I was just thinking about going back to 65 Prank. Because the wall signs without the backer panel meet the code requirement, but the backer panel is what's driving it, if that panel was painted to match the building, the current building color, would the panel then no longer be counted as part of the sign?
I am not sure what you're asking.
Okay, so can you go to one of the drawings that show the panels, like superimposed on the building? Yes, so see the white box? So that's just a flat metal panel. If that was painted the same color as the building, and then the letters are individual letters mounted on the building, would the panel square footage then go away because it's part of the building and it blends with the building and you don't see it? Like, if you were to do channel letters on a raceway, the raceway doesn't count because the raceway is the mounting mechanism. So in this sense, this is the mounting mechanism. So with that variant, those requests go away if we painted these to match the building color.
So staff has seen instances of that, and when you're talking about a box sign, which this would qualify as a box sign, the entirety of the sign background is included. We don't differentiate what copy and background is.
Even though it's not a box sign, because it's not illuminated. These are individual metal letters mounted on a building.
Well, the sign itself, the white part of it is considered part of the sign itself. But we don't differentiate the color being part of the copy or not. If you're proposing it as like a total sign, then all of it is considered. If it was a raceway, like you said, yes, it wouldn't be considered. Because there is no physical or literal or any kind of interpretive way to say that that's part of the sign. But when you're including a background on it, we can't differentiate what's copy and what's background.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to eliminate, is so that it doesn't appear to be part of a sign. We kind of want it to disappear on the building. I don't think they really even want the white background, but we felt that that was the best choice based on the building.
My suggestion would be that you may wish to have a further discussion with the planning department between now and 2 weeks from now.
Sounds
To see if they can give you a good answer for that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on to our next case, which is 1053 Broadway, Druthers Bruin Company. Are there any wishes of the board?
Yes, I would like to make a motion. Okay. I motion to approve the requested variances conditioned upon the grant by the Common Council of a revocable consent or easement in a form prescribed by or acceptable to the Corporation Council.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of granting the easement, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Our next case is 255.
Sorry, Richard.
Sorry,
Interrupt. Just to clarify for the ordinance, should that be, is that specifically one that's introduced on or after today's date, August 11th? I'm not sure if an ordinance has already been introduced in the Common Council, and so I'm wondering if if the ordinance that would authorize this easement, would you want one introduced on or after today's date?
If the council has introduced an ordinance that would grant a permanent easement to the applicant, then we would accept that as meeting the condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our last case of the night is 255-271 Clinton Avenue. Are there any wishes of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. I would like to motion the board grant the variance to allow plus or minus 33 parking spaces, where 3 parking spaces is the maximum permitted, conditioned upon a restricted covenant or an easement in a form acceptable by Corporation Council.
Thank you. Can I get a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of granting the easement, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all, as always. And I'll bring this meeting to a close, this public hearing and public meeting of August 11th. Thank you.